Hello.
Oh, yes, you're there. Great. Hi, Justine is an amazing person. She has got such depth with what she does. She's a renowned international hypnotherapy trainer and creator of the Golden Thread Trauma Transformation Protocol. This is huge, and it is so important for us to have somebody like Justine who understands that thread. She's an expert in using hypnotherapy to help clients overcome many things: anxiety, depression, PTSD, and she has a particular focus on that trauma informed hypnotherapy element to help you. She's helped hundreds of clients overcome issues and lead to happier, more fulfilling lives. And her expertise has made her a sought after speaker and trainer. So I'm so thrilled she's here with us. And she delivers workshops and seminars internationally. Today, what she's going to go through, and I've heard some of this before and I love it, is who we are in our hot moments. But I'm going to let Justine explain what that means. Over to you, Justine.
Hey, and it's really good that Larry was talking about memories at the very end, or co-creative memories,
Yeah.
because creating those memories, the special ones that bring out the oxytocin and the good stuff, that is how we actually switch off trauma memories that are coming up. So yeah,
Right.
so when I go into like what I thought I'd do today is teach a process.
Yes.
Um, Instead of just getting into what's happening in our brain and why we are triggered and who we are when that happens. I know we've only got very short amount of time. I thought I'd try and quickly get into a technique as well. Yeah, so
Beautiful.
yeah, and how it ties into finding a soulmate. I think um when we are looking for someone, or we are trying to create anything in our life that's different to what we have now, we're creating something new. um, there are going to be uncomfortable feelings that come up in our body. There are going to be things that we need to work through, to get where we want to go. And one of the things I hear from so many people is how to tell the difference between what is a trigger, what is something coming up in our body from past experiences, and what is a gut feeling. And what is
Yeah.
my body telling me that, hey, maybe this person isn't right for me or is right for me? And how can we come to a place where we can really figure that out? And if there is stuff coming up from the past, how do we shift it like quickly without having
Yes.
to focus on the past all the time? A lot of our the mental health world, even the spiritual world, is about fixing yesterday and going back all the time instead of creating a way forward into what we actually want. So
Yes.
yeah, so what we're going to talk about today is what is actually happening in our body when we are triggered.
Okay.
What is
I'm going to
happening
turn myself off so that you've got absolute focus. But if you need me to come back
100%.
on, let me know.
I do like watching you though, Christina. I'm
Oh, I'll
focusing on
stay.
you.
I'll stay. I'll just turn my voice down off.
Yeah. So yeah, so hot moments for me are moments in our life where we have a sensation come up in our body that is not comfortable. But when we do that, we act and respond in a way that is not like us today. So you might go in a room, you might be a really confident, happy person, and all of a sudden you go into a room and you feel anxious for no reason why. You might be going to meet someone and you feel nervous. There's times, even times where for no reason at all, you might suddenly have an outburst and you need to cry, or someone might look at you funny and you start thinking, what is wrong with me, when normally you're a confident person. We all have them every day. So getting into what is going on in our mind when we have these responses is we have different kind of memories. We have explicit memories. Now, these are what Larry was talking about. These are memories we have access to, good and bad. The great ones are the ones that when we close our eyes and remember something, or even just remember it, they release oxytocin, they release good stuff in our body. We also have memories called implicit memories, and these are really important to learn about. It's only very new information in the mind world, but implicit memories are memories where times have happened in our past, usually not big stuff, It's usually little stuff, usually from childhood, where we had a situation happen where we couldn't really get our head around what was going on, maybe starting school for the first time, maybe parents arguing in another room for the first time, and we get a bit confused. What can happen is information can come into our brain like a normal memory, but if we were to go into overwhelm, the memories actually can be pushed down into our feeling part of our brain. And so what happens now is when we walk through the environment, memories are always triggered, memories that we have access to, and these other memories. If you think every time you have a conversation with someone, every time you go into a room, all day our brain is accessing memories and matching them up with things that we're doing now so that we can understand the world around us. So in the environment, there's sights and sounds and smells and all these different things that fire up memories, especially when we're having a conversation with someone. I think our attention span is, even listening to me now, while you're listening to me, your mind is going back into the past and thinking, oh yeah, this and that, and feelings, and coming up with ways of understand what I'm saying. So implicit memories are exactly the same. We're walking through the world and we have memories that fire up in our body that give us a nervous system response that may be like a chest beating telling us we're anxious. It could be a sore tummy, heaviness. And a lot of the time what it does is it tells us that where we're walking into is not safe. It gives us a response that whatever we're doing right now, and like if I was working with business people, it might even be they say to me that anytime I go to send an email, I get nervous and I don't do it. I've got blocks. And what's really happening is something in that cycle of going to send an email is triggering one of these memories, which is firing a response in the body that feels uncomfortable. And so we naturally move away from that discomfort. So when you think about that, when you're trying to get into new relationships or trying to change your life to make it different, of course, you're going to stumble across these moments of discomfort. A lot of the time we're taught to sit in the feeling and try to understand it and know what's going on. But now we know that a lot of the feelings that even we have in our body are put there in the womb from our ancestors and people that came before us as a startle response so that we can walk through the environment safely, right? So when we get into working with trauma and memories, we start to understand that sitting there trying to work out why we are feeling a certain way, there doesn't even really seem to, do we really need to, if we can find a way to switch these off very quickly, which I'm going to teach you. When we go deeper into these memories, what I find really interesting, which is the most important thing for people to understand, is that when we walk into an environment and one of these memories get triggered and opened up, our internal world becomes where that memory started. So say I'm 46 years old now, and I go into a room and suddenly one of these memories are triggered by a sight or sound, maybe triggered back to a memory of when I was 6, right? It means that my internal world, as the memory is opening up, is becoming that 6-year-old. My brain is going into that memory. So my thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and behaviors in that moment become that of a 6-year-old. And I do what I need to do at that age to back away. So this explains why you might get in a new relationship with someone. This is an experience I've had before. I think Kristina's heard it. It was a trusting, good relationship. But the minute the guy turned the phone over, so I couldn't see it, to give me attention, my body just went, because in the past I had been with someone that did that, and it ended up being a not good situation. So if you didn't understand the mind and understand that my body was responding in a certain way and I was going to have an outburst, that could probably cause a lot of harm in the relationship now, because it causes distrust that's not necessary, right? And my response to that, which would have been triggered from a former relationship, that response probably goes all the way back to being young. So what would my body do? Maybe want to cry, maybe want to eat, maybe suddenly go not very nice to that person for no reason at all, because my internal world is in that memory at that moment. It only lasts a moment. So what they say now is the memory opens up, 45-year-old Justine steps out of the way, in comes 13-year-old Justine, that's a little bit feisty, does what she needs to do to feel safe in that moment. And then it switches. She goes back. I'm back in the room, very confused about why I acted that way. Beating myself because I can't stop that trigger. You know, why can't I control it? Why am I acting this way? Why am I screaming at someone when I don't need to be? Why don't I trust this person when they've never done anything to take the trust away? So for me, finding relationships and creating your life for anything, whether it be a soulmate, moving forward in business, trying to get healthy, it's so important to be 100% yourself today. So I'm 46. It's so important that I'm 46-year-old Justine, and any of those parts that are coming through, to switch them so I have a choice in what I create in my life. My life is not being directed by past experiences and needing to be safe. Interestingly, even if people have had all the therapy in the world, we still have triggers because they're based on the environment. So you might go 50 years without a certain trigger, and suddenly you go in the room and there's just a sound or a person's face that looks a little bit like something, and boom, you have a new trigger. And it could be like, why did I act like that? So for me, it's really important to understand how we can switch these off very, very quickly, and how we can use it to get where we want to go, if that makes sense. So how do we do this? And this is a really cool thing. Number one is we don't need to know where these memories came from and why our body is responding the way it is. And to me, searching, going and finding and trying to find out why did I respond that way can be quite dangerous, because you always find what you want, and your mind is incredibly creative. As humans, we have a narrative brain, our frontal lobe, and what a narrative brain does, and we know this, is it is constantly creating stories about life that most of the time don't make sense. I spoke at a conference this weekend in Australia and got people to do this little activity that didn't make any sense, and everybody in the room got to make it make sense. And then at the end I was like, you guys are making stuff up that's not even true, because this is what our brain does. It loves to create stories. So if you had a feeling or sensation come up in your body that was related to maybe ancestor stuff, and you wanted to go exploring, you're going to find things that you think are causing the issues.
I
when
want
it
to
might not
ask
even.
something that I think is really, because you've just clarified something so strongly and powerfully, just a little bit further back, which is when we are triggered, the person we are goes back and the young person comes forward and takes over. And now you're saying that we want to stay in the age and the person that we are now. But isn't that difficult when the younger person, the younger part of us, is so triggered?
Yeah, so that's why we switch them off. This is what I'm going to teach you. So there's a difference between doing inner child work, doing parts work, and working with these memories. Okay.
Yeah.
And so even though we say it's a 13-year-old, it really is just a memory coming up. And when the memory fires up, it opens new pathways in the brain, which present the age where that memory got consolidated into the feeling part of the brain, just as a safety mechanism. And like I said, that part doesn't stay for long. So say if I was working with someone for emotional eating, we can switch that off in a second, because I guarantee you, and anyone can do this now, they would have gone into the kitchen or something's happened, a feeling or sensations come up in their body, the brain's done a bit of a switch, and the part that memory is associated to feel better is to eat something. So when you don't have that feeling, that behavior doesn't happen. I've done this with people, even alcoholics, where they've never had a drink, if we've found the memory that's causing that first drink. Does that make sense? So for me, when I say being 100% Justine at 46, it doesn't mean that our life is perfect and we're not going to make mistakes, but it means we have a choice in every decision we make, and we can't turn around and say, I made that decision because of my past or because of my childhood. We can make decisions based on ourselves 100% and what we want to move forward. So I think there's a lot of magic and a lot of power in that if you want to create a future with someone. So just so I can do it really quickly, I'm going to explain how we do this. There's no point talking about what they are and then running away, or else everyone will be disempowered. So basically what they found out in 2001 by Shocking Little Rats is that these memories can actually be switched off incredibly quickly. And the key to it is when a person is triggered, and this is what I do with people in session, but I teach everybody to do it themselves, is that when a memory is starting to be triggered and when the sensation is coming up, if we can get the brain to release oxytocin within 60 to 90 seconds of that memory starting to fire up, it gives the brain the message that they are now safe, and the memory moves out of that part of the brain and goes on a 5-hour journey, 4 to 5 hours of reconsolidating. It even goes through a part in the brain that in the frontal lobe that takes that memory and throws it in the past. That is why sometimes when we get triggered, or you hear someone triggered in front of you, they're talking to you as if they're there. You know, they might be talking about a relationship they had 10 years ago, and you would never be able to tell whether it's the relationship they're in now or there, because the minute they got triggered, their internal world was there again. So their voice changes, their mannerisms change, and they're talking in as if they're there. And it's like, whoa, okay, let's switch that thing. Do you know what I mean? So if with releasing oxytocin, when we lived in the wild as humans, we didn't have, it's not privilege in a bad word, privilege, but we didn't have the privilege of being able to sit down and be depressed and be anxious because there were predators. We had to find food and shelter. And so when we are working with this part of the primitive part of the brain, it has the ability to switch off trauma and keep moving forward to keep us safe, if we know that. So once again, when I said before, releasing oxytocin within 60 to 90 seconds of being triggered shifts that trigger without needing to know what it is. And you won't have that trigger again. It won't come back again because it's just a memory playing up. So how do we release oxytocin? One way, of course, is what we were talking about before, those beautiful memories that when you close your eyes and take yourself somewhere, it fires oxytocin and you know, you get all the good stuff in the body. But for most people and myself, when I'm triggered, it's pretty difficult to close your eyes and think about something good. And if you're triggered from your partner, if you were to close your eyes and picture something good with them, probably won't happen. It's quite funny when we think about what are we going to use. A target for me is something, if we close our eyes and think about it, every time you're going to smile, every time you're going to, you know, there's people that just, they're usually friends, you know, the cheeky ones that fire you up and you feel good. They're great. Those are what I call targets. So when we were in the wild, if you look at kids running around on the playground, when they stop running and they're puffed or they're being chased, what they do is they lean forward to put their head up and they go. You'll see them doing it. You'll do it yourself. When you're incredibly frustrated, you'll probably find yourself going like that without even thinking. Why? Because when you lean forward and put your head back and sigh, it actually gives your body the signal that you're safe and releases oxytocin. Because if you're being chased by a tiger, would you be going and blinking? No, you do that when you're over the threat. Okay. Yes. So when you, you know, even say with me, if I'm driving a car and I get triggered by a song, who doesn't? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And who knows where that comes from? An old song comes up and you're like, teary. For me, I know I can't do this, but I can look out up to light and blink for a second, or look to the side and blink for a second. I know that's changing the information that's going in my brain for a trigger. So for me, when we do what we did in the past to switch trauma to move forward, our brain doesn't know the difference between where we're living now and living in the wild with tigers and things. So yeah, one way to release oxytocin is to lean forward, look up. When we blink, I tell people to look and blink. What we're doing when we blink is we're confusing our brain. Are we in the memory, or are we here today? Or are we in the memory, or are we here today? And it causes what we call a mismatch experience in the brain where it needs to it's not being allowed to follow through. The pathways are not being allowed to open up so that we can do the behavior that keeps us safe, which we do every time we're triggered. So we're breaking that state. And then when we sigh, of course, the danger's over. And like I said, if you do that, and as soon as you notice you get triggered, and that's that 60 to 90 second window, and you release that oxytocin, that feeling moves, but so does the personality that's causing the issues or causing the sadness. One thing I do with nearly everybody that comes to the clinic is I say to them, close your eyes, and I want you to picture yourself naked in the mirror, because even people with the best self-esteem close their eyes, picture it, and they'll start going, I'm like, what words come to mind? And even the people that have done the most work come out with these odd words. They're not even related to the body. A childlike voice will suddenly come out. And so as soon as where is that feeling in your body? Get it out, bring your head up, think of someone you love, get that oxytocin going, feel good. Now I want you to do it again. Close your eyes, picture yourself, and they always feel neutral, and they're like, oh, I actually look good. Now, if you think of the person that every time they think about themselves, they have this voice in their head saying these words from somewhere in the past, how are you supposed to move forward and have good relationships, or create the life that you want, or be healthy, when you've got these words that are constantly dysregulating the nervous system? A lot of the time you don't even know they're there, because it's just so ingrained. And for me, doing that, you guys can do that exercise yourself at home, and like I said, the key is the minute you start to get triggered, you have the awareness and do it. If you're around people, like I said, and you can't just do that because people will think, what are you doing? Am I upsetting you? Just create an experience, tap your legs, look to the side. I always try. I was in a hospital a couple of weeks ago with my mum, and she's starting to get triggered. I'm like, just for a second, Mum, look at that light up there and just blink. Like, life is good, man. At the time it was hard. Like my father was in there, but Mum, instant switch, change. And I just got her to get some light in her eyes. People say, don't look at the sun. Tell you what, look at the sun for a second. When you're triggered, it will take away that response and actually rewire your
It's
mind.
amazing how quick that moment in time when you're doing that things can shift.
Yeah. And I have crazy stories. Like, I have people, most of the people I work with can't leave the house, extreme PTSD and things like that. I only ever work with them once doing this. It doesn't mean they're going to go forward and have a good life. They need to see someone, a coach, a therapist that will help them create what they want. But if we can find that trigger and that part and just switch it, they're now themselves, and they have a choice. They can choose to have a not good life. They can choose to create a good one. Having support to do that is the most important thing. Someone that's got your back, someone that teaches you to get where you want to go. But doing this will 100% change your life. And when it comes to finding a soulmate, like I said, you really want to turn those responses off. And I'll just say one thing really quickly. I've got 4 minutes. This is how, at the start, I said, how do you tell the difference between a trigger and gut feelings?
Yeah.
If you are having a sensation and you do that, and there's still a bit of a sensation there, I would start questioning what in the environment is happening to make me feel this way. Maybe it isn't past experience. And so for myself, I can gauge very quickly if responses I'm having in my body are related to maybe a choice I'm making or a person I'm around. Maybe there is something off that I'm picking up that is actually real. Instead of past experience being triggered. And I think that's really important to know.
Really important to know. And before you go, would you mind talking about that downloadable app with hypnotherapy recordings on that? We'll put a link in the chat, but if you could just explain what everyone's receiving.
So what I have now, the hypnotherapy, of course, is a little bit today. What we learned was memory reconsolidation. It's just an advanced brain technique. It's not really hypnotherapy, but one of what I mostly train people in is that, and then altered states and hypnotherapy work. So the app is just a hypnotherapy app that you can download onto your phone, and it's got lots of different recordings on it. They feel good, and they help your nervous system to relax and stay calm. And doing any techniques that make your body feel safe, plus switching off triggers, you're going to be in a good space to visualize what you want and be able to move forward. Yeah, so it's just a little app.
That's beautiful. And what we're doing with this, it's obviously in the chat, and also we're going to send out a 7-day complimentary replay from the whole day, and it'll be there as well. So anyone that couldn't make it today can still get your free gift as well.
Yeah, awesome. Very
Thank
cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine, and look forward to seeing you again soon.